Everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today, we are discussing Severance, the new Apple TV series directed mainly by Ben Stiller. Severance is an American science fiction psychological thriller streaming television series created by Dan Erickson and directed by Ben Stiller, Alfie McArdle. It stars Adam Scott, Zach Cherry, Britt Lower, Tremel Tillman, Jen Toluk, Deacon Latchman, Michael Chernus, John Tuturo, and I want to kind of keep the other ones, other individuals that are in this series a little bit under the belt, or, if you haven't seen it or seen any advertisements, I don't want to release too many names, but it's also featuring Patricia Arquette. So the plot follows Mark Scott, an employee of Lumen Industries who agrees to undergo the Severance program, in which it's kind of a little bit different from any other series that you've really seen before. And I don't want to really go into too much detail about the spoilers of what Severance is. I'm going to give my initial impressions of exactly how I felt watching the show. And then I'm going to go into kind of first episode impressions and then last episode impressions, just kind of give it an overarching feel of what I thought watching this television series. So it's got some really notable names behind it. It's got, Ben Stiller. Everyone knows him from generally his acting career, but he's really had an interesting behind the scenes, behind the camera work when it comes down to like Escape from Dannemora. I thought that was very interesting. I think it was loosely based off of a true story, and that had featured Patricia Arquette as well. She's also a producer on this show as well. So Ben Stiller is bringing the fire. Everybody, the supporting cast, the composers, the cinematographers. Uh, what do we have? Cinematography by Jessica Lee Dean and Matt Mitchell. Composers Theodore Shapiro. Everything is working on the highest cylinders possible. I walked into this show not knowing really anything about it, just basically going off the poster of Adam Scott sitting at a desk, and it looked pretty interesting, just irreverent in a way. And so I'd seen Adam Scott in a few things. A lot of people know him from Parks and Rec. People were exposed to him in Step Brothers with his comedy chops, and as well as Party Down, which is a big favorite among Adam Scott fans. A lot of people have seen Zach Cherry pop up here and there, kind of like a very funny character on anything from the show You to Succession to now Severance. He's really created a name for himself under that. I've never seen Britt Lower in anything, but she's been acting all the way back up before 2012. She even before then 2010 in Big Lake. She was in some Law and Order Special SVU. She was in let me see anything else. The show Casual, I think it was the show Wrecked. She's also been in High Maintenance. That was a HBO show. Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She's been in a lot of different types of, all over the spectrum type of genre to non-genre television and filmmaking. And so the actors, the behind the scene, in front of the screen, everyone is working on the highest cylinders possible. Now, going into this show, I think it's best if you don't know anything. If you're coming to this, brand new, I would walk into it's basically worth the Apple subscription for at least the month or two that you're going to watch this, because it is compelling as hell. It's funny as shit, and for the most part, pretty damn unpredictable. And alongside it being what feels like a very original idea, that also allows them to cultivate these real human emotions, kind of tied and weaved all in between those. And so, yes, the first episode absolutely had me hooked. I'm about to start talking about the first episode and just what the overall Severance program is. Um, so I would have expected you to have at least watched the first episode at this point. And if I didn't sell you already on the show, I would say I've seen, I think, about 4 or 5 shows across several different Netflix, HBO streaming, Disney streaming platforms. Severance is my number one show at this point of 2012. Sorry, 2012. What year is it? 2022. I think I've been severed. I don't know what year it is. Severance, as of right now, mid-April, is my favorite show of the year of 2022. It's going to be interesting to see if anything really pops above it. But I was thinking that Peacemaker was one of my favorite shows, kind of with the original action hero comedy led by James Gunn. Um, and this surpasses it. I think it's more of an even toned show. It's a little bit more what feels original, relatable, and the entire thing feels like it has a ton of money in it. It looks amazing. It's a beautiful show. On top of it, being acted well and being produced, heavily. I got to say that it looks like every single frame of the show is meticulously crafted. And yeah, I gotta say, I enjoyed the hell out of this first episode. So I will say, on top of that, I had a tweet that came out after the first episode. I believe I had, let me just pull that up before I continue. um my first tweet was Severance episode 1. I said, well, fuck, it looks like I'm gonna have to start subscribing to Apple Plus now. And I did. I actually had 3 free months on Apple Plus. That was included with my Apple Watch that I bought a while back. But I gotta say that it was totally worth it. I'm being exposed to high quality television that I've been looking for, that usually was provided by other platforms. This felt like it easily could have been an HBO show a few years back. Um, I think Escape from Dannemora was a Showtime show that was directed by Ben Stiller as well, and that had Paul Dano in it, and let me see. I don't have everybody off the top of my head. Paul Dano and Patricia Arquette were in that as well. Um, but overall, I thought that was an extremely highly well produced show that felt like you were watching a miniseries movie. And I didn't really have too many complaints about that show either. I was really impressed with Ben Stiller's ability to have a complete drama. I mean, this show Severance has a lot more comedy weaved in there, but there is also a high level of um, irreverent relatability to the characters and to the situation that we're in. Um, so yeah, I would have expected you to have watched at least the first episode for the first little half of the podcast. Um, and that tweet was actually liked. The one I said I was. So it looks like I'm gonna have to start subscribing to Apple Plus now. Was liked by Ben Stiller, and I did notice, and I've heard over a couple other podcasts that the Severance cast have been very active on the social medias, kind of giving the love back to the people that are paying attention to the show. I didn't. had another tweet towards the end of the series. I won't give any spoilers away, but it was also liked by Deachin Latchman, who is another character in who's another actress that is in this show as well. And like I said, there are no small parts in this series. I was pretty blown away by it um, overall. So continuing on to the first episode, let's talk about what the Severance program is. I wanted to say that the main character, Adam Scott, is involved. He is relatively the main character of this ensemble piece, but because we're following him generally, but everybody almost has pretty equal screen time with regards of the main cast. And so let's talk about what is the Severance program, which is what we're introduced to the first episode in the first episode. So the plot follows Mark Scott, an employee of Lumen Industries, who agrees to a severance program. Who agrees, yeah, to a severance program in which his non-work memories are separated from his work memories, which is a fascinating idea on its own. Just kind of thinking about the repercussions. Maybe that sounds pretty appealing to some people. It's like, oh gosh, I wish I could just like skip to the end of the day. Well, I mean, that's essentially what they're doing. Um, Once they enter the workspace, they essentially turn into a secondary self, which they actually classify as in their selves going to work in work as their any, and when they leave work is their outie, kind of like a belly button terms in a way. But I got to say that um with saying that, I was um I was pretty fascinated going into the first episode and just kind of going through it. I could tell just from a visual standpoint, I was like, this is going to be different. This is something I'm looking for in entertainment value with with regards to the pacing and the kind of weirdness that is happening throughout it, and its ability to uh, also provide these very dry laughs. And when I say dry, it's I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but sometimes just the comedy that is coming from it is just from having like an irreverent science fiction workplace television series. And I almost wouldn't even classify this as a television series because it feels like you're watching a movie every step of the way, just from the production value, the acting, everything. Like I said, it's working on all cylinders. So Mark agrees to be in the severance program, and his memories are completely separated. He almost you're becoming two separate people. And so, like I said, the series premiered on Apple TV Plus on February 18th, 2022, to universal acclaim from critics, who praised its performances, narrative, musical score, cinematography, and production design. Like I said, all of it is hitting on high cylinders. The Apple uh, is not cheaping out on skimping out on the cheapness on any of this. They are producing something that is quality. Um, in April 2022, the series was renewed for a second season. So we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But I just kind of wanted to get that out. Um, right now, there's one season, 9 episodes, all about 40, maybe 40 to 50 minutes each, give or take. Um, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. Let me kind of go into the premise of this, at least first episode. A sinister biotech corporation, Lumen Industries, uses a severance medical procedure to separate the non work memories of some of their employees from their work memories. One severed employee, Mark, gradually uncovers the web of conspiracy from both sides of the division. Get a little bit of coffee provided by Lumen. Ironically, this is a Apple TV Plus show, but the Lumen big corporation that they are following in this, and you know, kind of a little bit shady. It kind of feels like a strange blend of Apple, the real Apple brand, and like Amazon kind of combined together. And so let's hop into the first episode. So I would have expected you to have at least watched the first episode or be prepared to understand and hear all of the juicy goodness that is happening in this first episode. Episode 1 is Good News About Hell. This was directed by Ben Stiller. I think he directed one, two, three, four, 5, 6. So he directed the first 3 and the last 3 episodes. So, good news about Hell. A woman wakes up in a conference room with no memory of who or where she is. After being given a survey, learning she is Helly, a new hire at Lumen Industries. She's allowed to leave, but she is unable to do so. She then sees a video explaining that she has undergone this severance procedure, which bifurcated her memories to create a version of herself that will only exist inside the workplace. Ergo, the any versus the outie. Um, so Mark Scout, who works alongside Helly in Lumen Macro Data Refinement Division, discovers he is being prompted to depart. Sorry. He discovers he is promoted to department head in light of coworker PD's sudden departure. The outside version of Mark, ergo the outie, a former history professor grieving his wife's death and living in the Lumen subsidized town of Kier, encounters a man claiming to be PD, who gives him a letter with cryptic instructions. Mark returns home and interacts with his neighbor, Miss Selvig, unaware that she is the outside version of his boss, senior manager Harmony Cobell. So I will say, it's a little bit of a mouthful of information to kind of intake if you haven't actually watched the show. But essentially, we're following Mark, and we're trying to understand why someone would want to go through the severance program. In going through that, we're going to start talking about the next couple episodes here in a minute as well. um, we find out about the backstory of Mark, and what would drive someone or motivate someone to undergo the severance program. What are the benefits of someone that would really want to go through this? And honestly, you find out pretty damn quickly that it's mostly to suppress your outside self and your expressions and human emotions that would normally come, that you would bring in with you to work. Um, so yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating, and the way that they were executing it and kind of unfolding the mystery. And in this first episode, we honestly wake up on the table with the one of the main characters, Helly, who is played by Britt Lower, um, and essentially we find out the macro data refinement division, all of them are essentially on the severed floor. And it's slow reveals in a way that are still um, very, very well paced for a television show. It's, dropping bits and pieces of interesting information, a lot of visual storytelling, things happening in the background, information being given to you. Um, but I got to say that I was pretty thrilled by just watching the first. I think I watched the first 3 episodes. They were all released at the same time, and I was almost instantly hooked. So the mystery aspect of this strange workplace and the severance program, yeah, I was totally in. And on top of having the visuals were just so eye capturing, the direction felt like I was in the hands of an extremely talented and confident director, Ben Stiller. And I don't want to. I know he's the big name behind it, but we have other names behind it as well. Dan Erickson, as a writer, Andrew Colville, writer, Carrie Drake, Anna Unag Monick as a writer, Amanda Overton, Helly Lee, Chris Black. There's a lot of people writing on this show, but it feels like everyone was in the writing room at the same time, um, really working and refining, quote unquote, a really interesting script that I never once felt like was going or being directed in a different direction. And so, um, yeah, it's kind of like this dry humor workplace comedy that's wrapped up in that is wrapped up in a very elusive plot of this severance program. And we're going to start talking about the rest of the season. I would have expected you to have watched it or to have be prepared for spoilers throughout the rest of the season. But overarching, this is a very well crafted show. I was um, watching the last episode this morning really early. I couldn't sleep. And so I was like, oh gosh, I wish there was something good to watch. And I was like, oh shit, the last episode of Severance just came on. I was like, I didn't get my shit ready. I popped open the popcorn or something like that. I didn't pop popcorn this morning. I was drinking a little bit of coffee, but I was like, I was 110% ready to watch what was going to happen. And I'd say, um, you know, I'd say 98% of the show is spot on to the point where I was like, this is amazing television. Now, there are a few side plots that feel somewhat forgotten in a way. We're going to start talking about PD, who is the superior of um, Mark during the severance program. But I do feel like there's some small minor gaps in the storytelling that are just kind of not even mentioned or spoken about towards the end of the show, at least this first season. And so that's basically it. I think the easiest way to probably talk about this show through the episodes would be to kind of go through each of the characters. So the first one, like I said, Mark Scout, a worker for Lumen Industries in the macro data for refinement division, who is part of the severance program. And the reason he is in the severance program is because he is grieving the death of his wife, which it is kind of on the forefront face of just like not, they completely are holding back information from the viewer of who is Mark's wife. Why are we seeing all this grieving of her, but we're never seeing an actual photo of her, never seeing backstory, we're never seeing flashbacks, that type of stuff. And so we're very much in the perspective of the any Mark. And now when they are the any Mark or the any Helly or the workplace environment versions of themselves are kind of like essentially like childlike in a way. They're not like acting 100% like children, but in the way that they're exposed to the world, they're very limited to what they've seen. So imagine like you working 9 to 5 in this macro data refinement center or whatever, little cubicle desks and stuff like that. And the set designs are immaculate. I can't say enough good things about it. I don't have a name for the who did it, but whoever did the set designs is spot on. Um, so the memories of the uh any workers are essentially they stop once they leave the building, and they begin again when they come back into the building. I know it's Specifically, the elevator is what activates and deactivates the severance chip in their head, which is something that we see implanted in Hale around the second, I think it's the what is it, second episode. And it's pretty intense. It almost seems like some Elon Musk shit with the brain implants and shit like that. It honestly deters me from ever wanting to do anything like this because of the split personality aspect of it seems just horrifying on the face of it. Um, so Zach Cherry um, plays Dylan George. Marks or Dylan G. They're all referred. I think the majority of them are referred to as like Mark S or Dylan G or uh, Irving or something like that. Most of them are referred to as their first name with the last name attached, just their initial, with the exception of Irving. I think I don't know why, but um, anyways, Dylan G or Dylan George is Mark's severed coworker who enjoys company perks. And he is cracking me up during this. He's from the first episode, he's like the ultra refiner. And I haven't even talked about what refining is. It's like they have to look at a screen full of random numbers and literally click the scary numbers out and put them into a file bin labeled Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4. And that's what they're doing all day from 9 to 5 is just picking out the scary numbers. And apparently the scary numbers will jump out at you. That any versions of themselves will see scary numbers on the computer screen. And it feels like the set design is made from somewhere like in the mid 1980s, and they have these old ass computers where they're just like rolling a little ball and like clicking random numbers and placing them into a file. I was just like, it's so it's such a dry humor type ridiculous on the face um type premise that it's just hilarious to watch as well. um but honestly, they kind of get caught up into the mix as just as much as I'm caught up into the show. They get caught up actually trying to get the scary numbers. I mean, at one point they're all like gathering around Helly, who's a really good refiner at one point, and she's just like clicking all the scary numbers, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's at 76 refinement numbers, oh my chicks. She's getting them scary numbers. And so uh I just thought the MDR department is freaking hilarious. Um, so Dylan G, he's got like these random perks that they're trying to win. And you know how like big companies are always trying to say, all right, if you get so and so numbers, if you get your sales numbers to so and so, 500 by the end of the week, then we get to have a party or a pizza party or something like that. And so they have these random rewards that are so subpar. They're like, you get, if you do find so many scary numbers in a certain amount of time, then you're going to have a waffle party. You're going to have a melon party. You're going to get paper mache bullshit. It's like a lot of the the rewards for these really minute tasks are minute rewards. It's kind of it's super dry on the face of it. And I keep saying dry because no one's really like goofing off and laughing at that point because they're like super self-serious about it. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get that waffle party. And Dylan G keeps talking about this fucking waffle party throughout the series. And I'm like, what is this thing? Is he just like having, breakfast at some point? And so the more you think about it, these little minute rewards that they're getting are actually really big deals to them as the severed employees because they haven't been exposed to the real world. And so they have like little office activities. I don't think I've laughed at a television show um, this hard since, I want to say, maybe The Office, with Steve Carell, and you got Jim and Dwight and Pam and all of them. Um, and that it's kind of that realm of kind of ridiculous, um telling a joke but at a but keeping your face very straight. It's like, are you serious, man? And so the type of comedy is right up my alley. And whoever was leading the writing room, absolutely 10 out of 10. The comedy serves itself just as much as the dramedy. The the tonal shifts of the show for me worked so well, um, which I was just like I was here for. So yeah, Dylan G is all about the rewards. Brittany Lower is Helly Riggs. We kind of talked a little bit about her, but she is a new employee hired to replace Petey, the former head of MDR. And so we're trying to figure out what the heck happened to Petey. You know, where did he go? What's going on with him? And Helly Riggs or Helly R is we're trying to figure out what her motivation is. We try to figure out why she's woken up on a table, or I can't believe they just like threw her on her table. That's where she wants to wake up as her severed self. I was like, okay. So yeah, I was pretty hooked by that. Just her Brittany Lower's kind of like wide-eyed, like, oh my god, what is going on face, you know. I was here for it the whole time. um and I think she's kind of our proxy character. Like we are kind of experiencing in real time what the severed program is, and we're also exploring it as well through her kind of quote unquote manager boss, which is Adam Scott, and just the ridiculousness of going through the program and entering the building itself is a montage in its own. Um, how deep and far below you got to get into the severance program to actually really understand what's going on. How top secret this tech is. Let me get a little bit of coffee. Mm. So yeah, her wide-eyed expressions throughout this whole thing of like discovering what's going on is very important for understanding the characters as well. Tremel Tillman, I've never seen this guy. Um, and I gotta say, let me see, he's a theatrical actor, like off Broadway and on Broadway. Um, has a little bit of television under his belt too. Difficult People, Diet Land, Elementary, Godfather of Harlem. I've heard good things about that. And Hunters, haven't seen that, and of course Severance. Now, this guy is fucking amazing. I was blown away with his ability to interact with all of these individuals, mostly because one, I had never seen him. So he's like, for me, he's an unknown actor, kind of in the same realm as Britt Lower for me. I hadn't seen her in anything either, to my knowledge. And Tremel Tillman's ability to kind of, have this uh, smile that would turn into like this sinister smile was amazing. His performance and just his body language and his expressions in this show really made me, give a golf clap to him. We're talking about the Masters too a little bit. We're not talking about the Masters, but yeah, just because we're timely like the Masters. Um, every time he was on screen, I just was like, I was floored with his performance. I'm so scared that Marvel is going to see this guy and just pick him up for a superhero role, because he is the type of guy and type of actor that you want to be able to, have kind of a interesting physique when it comes down to his the way he carries himself, the way he's ability to balance comedy and drama all in one blend and maybe all in one scene, and then a splash of sinister. He reminds me of Jonathan Majors in a way, with how confident he feels on screen and his ability to carry, like I said, comedy and drama, how important those two are together. I was blown away by his performance. um, Jin Tulak as Devon, who is Mark's pregnant sister, it kind of comes into play as the rest of the season goes out. I thought her ability to bounce off Devon's ability to bounce off Mark, just with their kind of over the top unpredictable comedy. They would just have like these really quick, snippy one-liners in a way that would, I was like, oh shit, they definitely feel like they were of a family. Miss Casey, let me see. Yeah, Miss Casey. Um, yeah, this actually is a spoiler for people that have not watched the show, so I don't want to give too much away. Actually, we're in spoiler section, so I technically can. But if you, well, you're in spoiler section now, so it doesn't really matter. But Deechin Latchman as Miss Casey is the wellness counselor on the severed floor. So we got a little bit of stuff to kind of see. She's been in some television as well. Being Human, Agents of Shield, Altered Carbon, Last Resort. She's in Animal Kingdom as well. Um, I don't remember seeing her in Animal Kingdom. Maybe she's in the latter seasons. Um, she's also been in films such as Aquamarine, Bled, Lust for Love, Too Late, and Bad Therapy. I haven't seen any of those, but I'm pretty impressed by her ability. She's Australian, by the way, by her ability to kind of bring in this very cold, robotic um, type character that is clearly something's going on with her in the first couple episodes, excuse me, and you find out later in the season, like I said, we're spoilers at this point. We find out that she is Gemma. Gemma is the quote unquote dead wife of Mark, who was in a car wreck, apparently, and a former, she was a professor as well. But for some reason, she's on the severed floor and she's not dead. And Audi Mark does not know that. And any Mark knows who Miss Casey is, but he doesn't know that it's his wife. So they're like working together ever so often. She has the wellness counselor, has these wellness sessions that are just like they have to hear things that any versions of the characters that are in the show get to hear what their outies are like. And so and when they're hearing these things, they have to go through this very weird rigorous kind of program where she's just sitting there and telling them all about themselves, and they have to equally give each of the details the same amount of attention. So they can't like really smile, they can't cry, they can't like show expression. They have to absorb each of the facts, quote unquote, equally. And so I was the first time you're going through it, I think it's with John Tuturo, and it is kind of bizarre to see and hear, and it is so fucking ridiculous is the only word I can think of. But I'm sure there's a better adjective that we can kind of place there. But it's funny, and I got to say, even the side jokes in this, the things that you think are just jokes in the show, become actual plot points and narrative touchstones throughout, um, you know, throughout the show. When she's talking about you have to react to the to your Audi's the information you're hearing about your Audi equally. It's a touchstone that comes back in like the seventh episode of finding out who Gemma is. And there is this very interesting reveal as Audi Mark S is kind of going through this other trying to go through another dip his toe into a relationship with another character named we're going to call her Lexi, because otherwise we're going to set off all the echo devices in everyone's home. So we're just going to call the Alexa character Lexi. Okay. So when he's trying to talk to Lexi throughout this entire television series, or at least this first season, he's talking about his dead wife and everything like that. And so it's it's not revealed that it is Gemma or Miss Casey until episode 7, and he's talking very very much similar details that Gemma was giving in her wellness sessions. So if you go back, this is going to have a tremendous rewatchability on the show, is because there's so many little minute clues that you think are just like possibly just details about or sorry, comedic parts of relief. They actually are details about the plot that you kind of need to pay attention to. Michael Chernus as Rick and Hale. Oh my God, he is another uh, like staple of the show that had me in tears, just laughing my ass off about the things that he was doing and saying. And he's like the self-proclaimed author. In this first episode, they're having, dinner with no food, and he's like, "Oh, I love these types of meals," and shit like that. I can't think of any of the lines he has the top off the top of my head, but he has these, you know, he almost has a minor cult following of like these self-righteous individuals who are trying to follow in the way of the Ricking kind of thing. And he has this book that he's created, and there's just so many side jokes that uh honestly come to bear of like, you know, they aren't major plot points in the show, but it still had me in fucking tears, just laughing my ass off at how ridiculous this guy was. And you don't really realize it, but it's kind of toward the end of the season that he knows that Mark thinks he's kind of ridiculous and stuff like that. But this book that Rickon creates gets in, he writes, he's like, there's 20 copies out there, everyone's going to want one if it gets out. So it's like, I don't know about all that, but um Rickon essentially is, he has this book, and it's all about kind of ridiculous things that are happening, outside the world, just kind of taking minute words and, explaining them in ways that are very just on the surface, ridiculous. um and so they kind of, the any versions of um the characters and workers are reading this self-help book, quote unquote, um and they kind of look at him as like a, not quite their god, but he is kind of like a redeemer, and he's kind of a buffoon in real in the real life of the show. And so you really kind of have to watch the show to understand how ridiculous this guy is. Let's go to John Turturro. Oh my God, John Turturro. I knew recently he was kind of having a renaissance of coming back, and most of his roles, for me, I had seen him in, comedy dramas, but he is so damn good. I think the earliest thing I've seen him in was probably Oh Brother Where Art Thou, I believe that was the first thing I saw him in, and he's been in a ton of other things as well. He was in Raging Bull. I didn't even see that, but I know he's been in classics like that. But he's Big Lebowski. Uh, the Let me see if anything else that kind of, there's so many things that I can even like uh, put my finger on all of them. He was in obviously the Transformers franchise, which I think they completely underutilized him in that. Um, but when I saw what he could really do recently in, we saw him in the Batman most recently, but we also saw him in the television show The Night Of. He plays, I believe, like an attorney or a lawyer or something like that, trying to get this guy out for this crazy murder that the guy can't remember he did. Um, you know, John Turturro has this face that they can just put the camera on, and you feel instantly empathetic toward this character. Like, it's not even sympathetic as in like just seeing him, but empathetic. Like, you can absolutely feel the pain that this guy is going through. And he is just having a new renaissance. And I want him to be continuing on in these types of roles of, the comedy drama television shows, because he just brings the fucking fire. I was blown away by the performance he was giving. I was like, it was even better than in the Batman, because he's allowed to, in this series, kind of give a comedic performance and a dramatic performance, and he has a love interest that you are feeling for this entire time. And so uh, this is where I'm going to talk about the other characters that are in this that I didn't even see advertised. Christopher Walken as Bert Goodman, the severed chef, the severed chief of optics and design division, who is drawn to Irving. So Christopher Walken, we already know he can do basically no wrong, but he's been playing himself in so many different, uh, pieces of filmography. Let me see if I think it was when did they start kind of basically playing a parody of himself? I feel like he's been playing a parody of himself for like maybe 10, 15, 20 years since mid 2000s. Let me see if I can find it. Oh my Jesus. I didn't realize he was a Broadway actor. I kind of was a little bit in the dark about that, but we've seen him in a bajillion different movies. He's been in over 100 movies and television shows. Uh, The Deer Hunter, King of New York, Batman Returns, Pulp Fiction, Sleepy Hollow, True Romance, Catch Me If You Can, music videos as well, dancing his ass off, recording artists such as Madonna, Fatboy Slim. He's been in a bajillion things. His filmography has its own, uh, basically has his own Wikipedia. Um, yeah, and he's been in theater up until about 2010. He's voiced in video games. I think he's been on a CD before on whatever the Raven, whatever. He's done a bajillion different things, and I haven't seen him on too much television recently. I honestly haven't watched him on any of his television shows. He was on Saturday Night Live a few times between the 1990s and 2008. Um, but yeah, I haven't really seen him in too many things outside of his filmography. Like, I think he's basically been playing himself since the mid 90s. I mean, he kind of started to play a version of himself in Pulp Fiction, I think around maybe it was probably around Batman Returns in 92 that he kind of was starting to evolve into just playing Christopher Walken in everything he's in. He's not just playing Christopher Walken in this show, which is why I think I like him a little bit more in this than most things recently, mostly because he is playing a version of himself, but he's playing a version that is so much more sympathetic in a way that you are like, wow, it's touching. He's drawn to the character of Irving throughout the entire series, and I didn't think that I was going to have like this emotional connection to the show, let alone to the characters having um, some sort of touching part about it. But hold on, let me grab some real quick. But yeah, Irving is drawn to the Bert character. So we have two amazing actors, John Turturro and Christopher Walken, um, coming together, and they have amazing chemistry. The From the writing of them kind of dancing around to see if they are like each other, they sort of flirting a little bit with each other, but there's just these scenes of like Christopher Irving's the Bert character in Irving. They are they going to have a connection, and they absolutely do. I was like, Jesus, it was one of the most heartfelt um relationships on screen was between two gay men that I have been watching for years and never even considered that they would be a good couple. But I'm like, good God, I felt the love. Um, and so a lot of it is it is a lot of it is Bert kind of being charming, but John Turturro's character is Irving. You just see his eyes, every time we turn the camera to him, it's just like, oh my gosh, he looks like a little puppy that you just want to help. And so I was floored by it. Um, Patricia Arquette. Patricia Arquette is kind of in the same way as Christopher Walken. Really, she has this ability to be really, really intense, but also reel it back into a different gear and then be extremely sweet. And she has this like interesting transatlantic accent going on as the outer selves are interacting with. And so I'm just like, what is going on with this character of Harmony Coble, or Miss Selvigs, who's Mark's boss and also Mark's next door neighbor? I will say another line or part of the puzzle that I was a little bit in the dark about was, why was she so obsessed with Mark to the point where she's like basically breaking in his house and violating his space and stuff like that, essentially spying on him at all times without the quote unquote board's knowledge. Now there's this ominous board members that we only really get to interact with for the first half of the season. Over half the season we're just trying to figure out who the hell is the board. Is it Rickon? Is it this ominous lady, Natalie? Uh, is it this family called the Egans, which that's a whole nother can of worms. Whoever created the lore of the Egans is just hilarious. Like I said, the writing and the backstory of all of this going on is just had me in tears from rolling on the ground in tears. I was loving it. Um, so yeah, I do feel like the overarching story is extremely strong, but I will say that there's small things like the Petey character played by Yul Vasquez, as he plays Petey, or Peter Kilmer, an ex-severed Lumen worker, and Mark's best friend who is fired under mysterious circumstances. Essentially, Petey figures out what's going on with the Severance program and them having to go through like the quote unquote scary break room. And basically he finds out how terrible the the severed program is, and that the Ennies want, a lot of them, once they find out how bad it is, they want out, or they want to be reintegrated with their outer self. And so if the Ennie wants out, or if they are terminated by their outer self, um, which is the scariest thing on the face of it, is that um, you know the two halves of the person, the reason that they are in the severed program are because of themselves. It's not really 100% the company doing that, but it's yourself that is pushing you back into the program. And so it that's probably one of the scariest things about the show itself. Nope, I got a little bit on mustache. Yeah, so the scariest thing is the fact that you are your own worst enemy in this show. It's like, oh fuck, that is some scary shit. And so Petey figures this out very, very quickly. In the first couple episodes, we're trying to kind of figure out who the hell this Petey guy is, and it eventually comes to light that he is an ex-severed Lumen worker, and he's figured out how to reintegrate himself. And eventually, because of medical circumstances, he dies on his own because of, I guess, how the severance program was turned off, um, by this other individual named Regabi, who is a former Lumen surgeon. And so that's another part of the puzzle that is really not touched upon in this show. It's just it's essentially not swept under the rug, but it just feels like they want to leave a lot of stuff for season two. So I'm glad that season two has been, um, has been announced. So Michael Cumpsty as Doug Grainer, Mr. Grainer, has his face like I've never seen someone's face just like immediately like, oh my God, this guy needs to be definitely head of security of whatever business you got, because he has just got this face that I'm like scared to death of. If he was in my school when I was in high school or junior high, I'd be like, holy fuck, I never want to see that guy in my life. He seems like a uh, the actor seems like a very, maybe a nice guy, but I'm not talking about the actor, but the character he's playing just is like really fucking intense. He eventually is taken off the board by Regabi in the second to last episode, I believe. And that's when you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like this, there is life or death going on in this show as well. So Lexi, who plays Devin's midwife, is played by Nikki M. James. She's kind of more or less like the side subplot to kind of really push Mark in a way that says, do you want to be in a relationship and kind of move on from the death of your wife? And unfortunately, it's a rocky relationship for him and for Mark and Lexi. Let me see. Natalie is played by Sydney Cole Alexander, is Lumen's PR representative and liaison for the board of trustees, and she's always talking to the board on this like Bluetooth earpiece, and it's just like, oh my Lanta. The only way that you're going to be able to talk to this board is like going through her as the proxy, and it's like, are we ever going to get to see who's on the board really? And it's kind of played up for comedic effect, but it's also very intimidating as well, because it's like, all right, it's like once the board's done talking to you, it's just like they're off. And so let me see who else we got. Mark Geller's likeness as Keir Egan, the founder of Lumen Industries, who is worshipped with cult-like reverence within the company. I mean, they essentially are, they've turned Kier into what is essentially the it's almost like a cult like mentality of just everything's for Kier, everything's for the Egans, everything's all praise the Egans. Um then we have what is it? Michael Spyberry as Jane Jane. Oh, I guess I have a buddy that's named James, and they just like call him James, ironically as well. James Egan, the current CEO of Lumen Industries, is he's not really revealed till the end of the season, but yeah, he is. I think the father of, now we know, is Hale Riggs, who is actually an Egan as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Um, when I was listening to podcasts, a lot of people were predicting that someone that is severed is going to be an Egan, and a lot of people were putting the not the blame, or putting the idea that Helly was an Egan. So when it was revealed that she was an Egan, I was like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense a little bit, and just the way that they kind of treat her in a way. Um, but Helly did, the inner Helly did try to commit suicide at one point during the course of the season, because she didn't want to be severed anymore. She didn't want to be that version of herself anymore, that type of thing, which is very understandable. But it's also scary that it was her outer self that was pushing her back in. And I got to say, the editing of this show was very, very spot on. Not only is it from the comedic standpoint, but kind of the splicing the individuals going in and out of the stairwell. I was fascinated from an editing standpoint, just from a technical standpoint, that this show was so well crafted. I you know as a digital media creator and content creator, it makes me want to study this from like a technical standpoint, because I was like, good God, this is amazing. It is like a magic trick of like, how the hell did they do that? And so when they show the different perspectives of the outies and the innies, of why they are being pushed into the hallway and then being pushed out back into the severed program, and how that is affecting them mentally, is pretty interesting, just from the visual standpoint alone. And horrifying from the story perspective. Let's see what else. And what I hadn't even thought about until I had listened to a few podcasts about it, um, is, are they testing the severed program for other, wide use, not just using it in the workplace? But we do find out in the final episode that they are being severed for, they're trying to offer the severance program for other reasons, such as pregnancy and not wanting to remember um, how difficult it was to have a baby or something like that. That would be an example. Um, but from the any perspective, that person that just had the baby, let's just say you have the severance program or the microchip in your head, um, turned on and off. The only thing you're going to remember as an any is the pain of childbirth, and that's what that any is going to remember, which sounds horrifying on the face of it. Just putting yourself or someone's self in that perspective, I'm like, good God, this is horrifying. So they are trying to expand the severance program, and so yeah, there is Petey's ex-wife, Nina, Petey's daughter, June. Those kind of feel like they are not unnecessary plot lines, but they kind of just feel like a little bit of extra fat onto the show. My guess is that those characters probably were not on the initial storyboard for the story originally. So my guess is that what had happened was they added these characters after the show was greenlit, and they probably needed a few extra episodes to kind of follow through with like PD and stuff like that. So yeah, Gabby Arteta is a new mother a new mother married to Angelo Arteta. Angelo Arteta is a senator that is trying to legalize the severance procedure. Um, and he's really for the severance procedure for reasons like his wife is having multiple kids, and apparently she just doesn't want to go through the pain of or remember the pain of childbirth. So that's one of the reasons he's for it, and it's maybe not so positive in that perspective. And Ragabi, the former surgeon, lumen surgeon, who I think implanted the chip and then um, tried to help Petey out eventually. But Petey, I knew Petey was not meant for this world, just because if you've ever seen one of these types of, I don't know, if you've ever seen Petey, sorry, the characters that escape the weird, you know, programs or companies and they're on the run and they are not the main character, they are just primed to be taken off because they have too much information generally in most of these stories. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head what Petey's character would relate to, but if you have watched any television show of this nature, you would realize that Petey has got a big X over his head, and you got to watch out for anything that's going to happen. And ironically, he's his character is experiencing like the innie and outie versions of himself are just kind of like clashing, and the editing of it is pretty remarkable. But eventually it kind of like succumbs to some sort of like brain hemorrhage or damage or something like that, and he just goes down in the middle of a gas station. And it kind of feels a little fucked up that Mark doesn't go to help him immediately, but I guess he doesn't exactly know who he is, but the outer version of himself is. But it's also sad that he didn't go to help his friend, who apparently he was one of PD was one his best friend in the severance program. So yeah, small gripes, but the majority of the show is fucking phenomenal. Let's talk about this very final episode real quick. Episode 9, The Way We Are. Mark's Innie awakes in Devin's home and finds him hugging Cobell. This is right when we find out that there is this OTC program over, what is it called? Basically, you can override the severance program to make it so that the inner self comes out anywhere they need. Um, but it requires two people. So Dylan G, he's got the strength of two men, has to like spread his arms very far and wide to click these two knobs to turn on the severance or turn off the severance program to bring the innies out when the characters are in the real world. So you're from episode 8 to 9, you're like, holy shit, this is gonna be an amazing episode, and it fucking was. So the any self Mark's Annie awakes in Devon's home and finds him hugging Cobell while excusing himself while excusing himself to find Devon. He calls Cobell by name, alerting her that the overtime contingency um, has been activated. And I actually didn't catch it at first that he called her Cobell and not Selvig. And I'm still trying to figure out what Patricia Arquette's motive is. It feels like the majority of the season she's trying to prove that the Severance program can can be reversed in a way, or at least reintegration is possible. And I'm not sure if reintegration is the innie taking over the Audi self, or if the innie and the Audis are becoming one. I'm still kind of learning about that. Um, I think it might be the latter. But essentially, it seemed like because she got fired and they find out that she's going way and above company grounds of like basically stalking Mark at these points, um, that she does find out Mark wants to quit the severance program, and she's like, "Good, get rid of them and stuff. Get away from them," kind of thing. And then she finds out that overtime contingency has been activated, that something bad is going to happen. And it feels like she kind of snaps back to like being a Lumen employee, like, oh shit, I got to go help these people. And so Cobell calls Milchek and has him check the security office. And we were doing this hopping editing style from going from um, Irving to Dylan G to Mark S to Helly R. And all of them are experiencing different parts of the world where they're at. Helly wakes up in the middle of the big gala that's been talked about for the last few um, weeks. And Mark wakes up into this like small party at Rickon's house, and Dylan G's stays inside the overtime contingency security hull or something like that, so he doesn't get turned, his innie doesn't get turned in. But because he has to hold the switches while they're doing this. So there's like this ticking time. It's not a literal ticking time bomb, but it's like, how long can Dylan hold the overtime contingency switches, and before Milchek gets to him. So you're just like on pins and needles watching this shit. So like the pacing and the tone, and you're like, holy shit, this is fucking amazing. So Coble calls Milchek and has him check the security office. Mark privately reveals to Devin that he is in any form. Um, Devin tells him of Gemma's death and learns that Miss Selvig is Mark's boss. And this like reveal of Miss Selvig not actually being, like the midwife lady. I got to say real quick that Patricia Arquette has this one. The reveal is amazing. You're like, holy shit, where's the fucking baby? There's before I go through the next couple lines, there's a scene of Miss Selvig or Patricia Arquette kind of like showing how to like take care and feed the baby and stuff like that. Um, they have the ugliest fucking baby that they're like, it looks oddly realistic, but also it's got like the scowl on the face of the baby. It's not a real baby, but she's like, she's like acting all like uh sweet towards this fake baby, and you're like, the camera's kind of like looking over her shoulder and stuff like that. And then she's like, yep, you just go like this at a latch, and then she's like, and then you're all done, and she slings the baby on the fucking the fake baby on the couch, like face down, and she's like, that's how you do it. It's like the worst like bedside comfort that you could ever really get. That had me fucking dying laughing. I was fucking cracking out loud. Um, but yeah, I was totally here for it. And so yeah, when they find out that Miss Selvig is actually Miss Kobo, is Harmony, it's just like, holy Santa Claus shit. And so it's like everyone's running through the house trying to find the baby. Rickon's flipping out. This one guy that's one of Rickon's friends is eventually takes he's like following Mark throughout the house, kind of trying to look for the baby. Mark actually does find the baby, and this other guy comes and claims claims that he did. Hey, he's like, I found it, I found her, I found her. It's like, oh my gosh. um that was a hilarious shit. It's like, It's like, why is it so important to you that who found the baby? It's like, all right, whatever, ass. Um, so Irving wakes up in his apartment outside. Wakes up in his apartment discovering his Audi's paintings and military background. It is pretty horrifying. This like Ace of Spades, they have some pretty notable songs throughout this series. They probably had to shell out some serious doage um, for them. But the I got to say that the hallways that Irving was apparently just repetitively painting as his Audi self are just all over his fucking wall. And I kind of wish that they would have saved that reveal for the when his Annie had discovered it. We do get this like black goo throughout the series that we're trying to figure out um, why Irving is seeing this black goo all over the place, and you figure out, oh, it's paint under his fingers, it's paint that he's seeing, um, and his outer self is painting like the break room and like repetitive times, listening to some crazy ass music, um, and so we don't get too much of the outer Irving about understanding where he's coming from, but he does have a dog named Radar, and he's living alone, that kind of thing, and we do discover he has this military background. Maybe he's suffering from PTSD and wants to kind of forget about it through the Severed program. Um, he also finds a map, an employee directory in the closet, which he uses to locate Bert. And it looks like his outer self has already been trying to navigate all of this information, but inner Irving is like, oh my gosh, I've been kind of thinking about this, regardless if I'm in the Severed program or not, regardless if I'm in the Severed workspace or not. And so, Irving's immediately on the mission to go find Bert. And I could tell from a mile away, this is nothing but heartbreak about to happen. I was like, first of all, I do got to say, the leaving of Bert was amazing. You smug motherfucker, like from the dance party to the melon party to the watermelon party to the goodbye Irving party, to just the circle of uh, the Severed employees kind of talking about themselves. And they really don't know anything about themselves. So when they're announcing things at the beginning, when Helly's giving her hi, I'm Helly. I'm 5'2". I like melon. That it's very subtext. On the face of it, just information of who they are, what they look like, because they don't have really any personalities as the inner self. So it's just kind of ironically funny and sad at the same time. um, so anyways, I knew Bert was going to when Bert leaves, that is a very sad goodbye scene with Irving just in complete heartbreak, when they're gonna burn this motherfucker down, but he has to go find Bert first. I was totally here for it. But I was predicting mentally, I was like, this is nothing but heartbreak about to happen, because you know Alder Bert decides that he needs to retire, he wants to retire, and any Bert can't really do anything about it. And Irving is hurt the entire time, and of course he's going to be hurt when he finds out Bert has already got a real life love interest that is not Irving. Annie wakes up at Lumen's gala, where she learns that her Audi is Helen Egan. And like I said, it probably would have hit me a little bit more if I didn't have that kind of earworm that someone's probably going to be an Egan. But it did kind of make a lot of sense that she would have some sort of connection towards the Lumen company. She A lot of her backstory was kind of held close to the chest. The cards were held close to the chest about that. Um, so she's the daughter of Lumen's CEO, James Egan. The name James cracks me up. I'm sorry. Not James, who underwent severance to build public support for legalizing the procedure. Cobell races to the gala and attempts to stop Helly from making a scheduled speech. Milchek reaches the security office and cuts his way through the makeshift restraints Dylan has placed on the door, same restraints that he uses to hold Bert back. And I got to say, there is this like the different departments that they apparently never interact. The fucking place downstairs of the Severance program is like a goddamn maze, and you never see any other employees except for the ones that are in your department. And so there is kind of like this underlying like uh underlying spectacle of did one of the departments decide to go crazy and really just have like an uprising and a coup? And so it really makes Dylan the entire time so skeptical of Bert. But you find out Bert's basically just a nice guy, and the other departments are just as nice too. But there is this like contention between them and friction that is happening throughout the entire time that cracks me up. My God. Um, and he at one point Dylan does this crazy looking rope knot and keeps Bert locked up. I have a feeling this was shot between COVID times and whatnot, and so I'm curious if they had to go into the restrictions. I'll kind of look into it in the production of it. Um, but I'm pretty sure this was a quote unquote COVID production, and I never felt deterred from it by that. Just because there was only a handful of people in the scene, I never felt like I was like, oh, this is clearly happening because of COVID. It always made sense why there was only a few people on the screen. Um, and the lack of security kind of goes along with how they're allowed to kind of go through the severed floor without being seen. And there's one part where there's baby goats in the closet or something like that. And of course, I got to talk about the waffle party real quick. But the fucking waffle party, I've never seen something so sexy and horrifying at the same time. I've seen over probably 550 different pieces of media between movies and TV in the last 3 or 4 years that I've covered on the podcast, and I have never seen anything quite like this horrifying waffle party that is happening in this recreation of the original home of one of the Egans. And Dylan's all about it, I guess. I don't know. He uses it to his advantage. I don't really know. So he earns a waffle party, and it's like this weird Cirque du Soleil sexual Joker-esque. Uh, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like they have like these individuals. I think they're all women. They're all in like this burlesque outfits in this really dark room after Dylan G has eaten these waffles in the dark in this recreation of this old ass house that is in the severed floor. It's like, where is this even taking place of? So in the severed floor, they have an Egan house, and it's like supposed to be like a museum kind of the Egans, and I guess and of their lives. But we go to it, and Dylan G's eating these waffles. And then after he's done eating the waffles, he has to put on this uh, James Egan head, paper mache, oversized, creepy looking head, and sit on the Egan bed. And then and he has like these like whips or something like that. I guess I don't remember what it's called, but like this like whips. um and he sits on the bed, and with his little prize that he had gotten, that is actually like this piece of glass that is kind of like what Mark S has on his table, of all four of them, the picture of them, but it's kind of etched in glass. Anyways, he's holding that, and so he has this James Egan head, paper mache, staring at what looks like a Joker, a Queen, a King, and like some other characters dressed up in like what looks like Cirque du Soleil outfits with oversized paper mache heads that are scary as fuck. I was like, what is even going on? I was blown away by whoever thought about this and this ridiculousness of this waffle party that we've been hearing throughout this entire series, that I I can't even barely describe it. It is so fucking ridiculous. But anyways, um, I digress. The Cobell races to the gala. Um, I can't even think straight after thinking about that waffle party. Cobell races to the gala and attempts to stop Hale from making a scheduled speech. Milchek reaches the security office and cuts his way through the makeshift restraints Dylan has placed on the door. And Milchek is like, if you don't open this door, you're going to get it. But the ways that he's trying to like convince Dylan that he needs that if he opens the door now, he'll give him like custom coffee coasters or something like that. It was like the most ridiculous things that he was offering. He's like, we got paintball, we got custom tablecloths or some shit, custom coffee holders or something. It was like the things he was offering were so minute and ridiculous that it's like, of course nobody would want that bullshit. But it goes along with like all the other dumb shit that they were offering offering shriveled raisins in the break room and stuff like that, extra dry or something like that. It's just very minute prizes for these workers. So anyways, Milchek breaches the security office and cuts his way through the makeshift restraints Dylan has placed on the door before the overtime contingency is stopped. Hale gets on stage and tells the crowd of her any subjugation. And she's talked to her father at that point. Her father's fucking weird. And I guess at that point he just found out that her any self tried to kill her, or tried, wanted to commit suicide. So he's kind of acting a little weird. I guess that would be natural. Or maybe he's just an Egan. I don't know. And so gets on stage and tells the crowd of the any subjugation. And the gala that they're at is like the photos that Milchek has been taking over the course of the entire series, with this old ass fucking camera, and they're blown up on these massive screens, and they are showing the quote unquote positive sides or the effectiveness of the severed program. It's like, holy shit, this is intense. And so yeah, it's like when Hale sees that as their any self, she's like taken back, like, oh my god, all of this is a fucking lie. And Hale gets on stage, and when she's going on stage for her speech, which she's supposed to go up there and say all the good things the severed program's doing, which it's actually not. She's like, they're torturing us down there, they're trying to get us shit, they're trying to fuck us up down there, help, 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 help. She almost sounds like a crazy person. And when she gets on stage and tells the crowd of the any subjugation, Irving arrives at the same time. All of this is kind of like intercut at the same time. Irving arrives at Bert's house, only to find he is married to another man. I saw that coming from a mile away. I was like, they got the big window right there waiting for heartbreak to happen. I was like, Irving, just go to the fucking door and say something, man. And so I don't even know if Irving gets to say anything. Mark finds a photo of his Audi's wedding to Gemma, thereby discovering that Gemma is Miss Casey. And I do feel like Miss Casey and Gemma, they get limited screen time throughout the series, but what is done with her is pretty effective in just showing how much you would feel for her. And so he's like, Mark's like, holy shit, she's a fucking live, and he's like running through the hallways like, and she's like, she's alive, like he like yells that she's alive in the middle of the party. And Devin's like the only one that knows what's going on with Mark. And then I guess the overtime contention in his head, contingency has worn off because Dylan's been tackled by Milchek and the switches are turned off. So it's like all at the same time at the most intimate moment, imminent moment, that they are turned back. And so he's running to tell Devin that his wife is still alive. And that, my friends, is Severed. Let me know what you thought about the TV show. Let me know what you thought about the review. I'm going to kind of give a little bit of the background of what the production went through, I guess, just what the ideas were. It says like this uh, this was influenced by I don't know what the Backrooms is or the Stanley Parable, but I definitely saw elements of the Truman Show in it. It looks like the majority of the cast, Arquette, Lower, Tolok, Cherry, were in the cast. Tillman were all joined around February 2020. Tuturo, Walken were added in November 2020. Deacon Latchman was added to the cast in December 2020. Tuturo said he recommended Walken for the role of Bert because he had known him for a long time and didn't really have to act. They didn't have to even act like they were friends because they were friends. Um, April 6th, 2022, Apple renewed the series for a second season. Um, let me see what else. Let me see. Ben Stiller first read the screenplay to the pilot at least 5 years before the show premiered, calling it the longest thing I've ever worked on. The script was submitted by Dan Erickson as a writing sample to Stiller's production company, Red Hour Productions, and passed to Stiller by development executive Jackie Cohen. And so Stiller said he enjoyed the story contributions to the workplace comedy, and then in 2017, good lord, that feels like 10 years ago. Stiller invited Adam Scott to star, and then in November 2019, Apple TV gave Severance a series order with Stiller directing and Scott cast in the lead role. Stiller was only attached to direct the pilot, but he decided to direct several more episodes as the series entered development. It's always interesting to see how things change and evolve and progress as creatives become more involved in these types of programs. So, or series. Let me see the filming. The COVID-19 pandemic postponed the initial production start of March 2020. Principal photography for the first season started in New York City under the working title Tumwater in November 2020, the day after the U.S. presidential election. Um, the opening scene of the show was shot on January 6, 2021. The series filmed for a few days in Nyack. Where is that? That must be Canada, I bet. Oh, Nyack is a town in New York, Rockland County, New York. In February, and in Kingston and Beacon in March. In April, filming moved to Central New Jersey. I think that's where actually the quote unquote Lumen building actually is located, and mainly in the Bell Labs Hindell complex. I think that's actually where that is. Yeah, it looks like a damn campus. It's fucking huge. Which stood for the Lumen headquarters. Filming was scheduled to conclude on June 23rd, 2021. Production designer Jeremy Hindell, I guess he was the one that was the PD. Production designer Jeremy Hindell blended corporate looks from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s from the show's distinctive look and cited modernist architect Eero Saarinen, I guess, as influential for the building design. It did remind me a lot of what Ben Stiller's friend, I think in real life, Owen Wilson, was just featured in, was the Loki series. Loki, it kind of had this workplace comedy vibe with, the 1960s, 70s, and 80s aesthetic, but it had this blend of like sci-fi with it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like the Apple version of that. But it goes a lot deeper, in my opinion, than just having the TVA, I think, was the company or the group that was running that in that show, instead of Lumen. Stiller said the prop master reconstructed old computers so that actors could actually do the work presented on the show in order to get adjusted to the office setting. So just small things about this show, like the little that from the editing to like the production design of them like being able to push down the tops of the desks of the cubicles. It's like there's four cubicles, and so it'd be like this and be like, "Psh," and Bert, sorry, Irving would be like, I don't know if you need to go do that. This is against company procedures. And then it was like, okay, I was, I, I thought that it was just fucking phenomenal from that. I can't really say too many much better than that. It's got 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I really can't disagree with that. So I look forward to the second season. I look forward to anything that Ben Stiller is going to direct. Um, as great of an actor as he is and everything that he's been in and produced, I think this is probably one of his highest pieces of art. And I'm here for it. So let me know what you thought about the review. Let me know what you thought about the show. Be sure to check out LuckyDogPodcast.com for all of the social medias, get full reviews, and help support the podcast on patreon.com/LuckyDogPodcast. And thank you, everyone. Take it easy.